It's too hazardous. According to my dad, he took out a $625 000 loan for Joseph's BMW and dashed my hopes when I requested $65 000 to launch my IT business. In order to preserve them, he now wants me to sell my house. I've been 34 for the most of my life, after kicking them out of my house. I think that with perseverance and hard effort, I would finally get the respect and encouragement I so much needed from my family. I was mistaken. Completely incorrect. But because of that error, I was able to create something they could never have dreamed. And I had just 4 things to say to them as they crawled back with their hands out. Leave my land. In the beginning of this tale, 2 boys and their parents somehow persuaded themselves that love was a limited resource that could only be given to one kid at a time. I am 3 years older than my brother. Joseph is 31 years old. And he was the focal point of our family's world as soon as he was able to walk. He had the strange ability to make everything about himself and play the victim when things didn't go his way. Not because he was a particularly gifted person. I was the responsible one growing up. Homework completed without request. Clean the room and finish the jobs. Everyone forgot that Joseph, the charmer, had just damaged something or failed another exam when he flashed his crooked grin. Robert and Linda, my parents, had a medium-sized accounting company. Despite their lack of riches, they were at ease. The partiality was overt. My father believed a $600 summer coding program was too costly when I was 12, and my computer science instructor suggested it. However, my parents managed to find space in that same budget for a whole semester, complete with equipment and boots. When one-year-old Joseph decided he wanted to take horseback riding lessons at $150 a session, I wanted to enroll in $800 a year, advanced computer science studies when I was 16. They claimed it was too costly. However, my parents found the money when Joseph, then 15 years old, I decided he wanted to join a top-tier travel baseball club that cost $8 000 a season. They even purchased a $1 200 bat for him. You're already quite proficient with computers. Finn, my dear, with the calm grin I'd come to despise. My mother clarified that formal lessons aren't actually necessary. However, according to his coach, Joseph has genuine promise. Scholarships and perhaps a professional career might result from this. Before he departed after being benched for skipping workouts, Joseph's true potential lasted only 1 season. Over $12 000 was spent in total. The cost of my computer science program is still too high. My high school graduation grade was a 3. The discussion turned to Joseph's challenging transitional phase, which had his missing most of his courses and being caught using marijuana outside the gym. My celebratory supper at Olive Garden, which included a 9 gigapascals and a half scholarship to State University, lasted 30 minutes. My parents started working on their rescue strategy. 3 times a week. A tutor for $80 per hour. And less work. A lighter course load. And perhaps private school, if his grades didn't improve. How about Finn, my uncle inquired. What is the strategy for financing college? It was all in the awkward stillness. When my mother finally commented, Finn is so independent. He has been working part-time and has already received that half scholarship. He will be okay. And that was all. The family planning session for Joseph's academic rescue mission turned into my graduation feast. Being the responsible one simply meant being taken for granted. I discovered that day as I sat there wondering what I would have to do to obtain even a little portion of their attention. However, I also learned something else from it. I would have to create it myself if I desired stability. Respect or success. And I did. I paid for college on my own. Worked 25 hours a week at the university IT help desk. and use student loans to cover the remaining balance, since our parents suddenly had a lot of money for tuition, housing and board, a meal plan, and a brand new Jeep Wrangler for Joseph's 18th birthday. They gave him a full ride. It was always the same excuse. You're so self-sufficient. Finn, you've always had the ability to solve problems on your own. Joseph needs more direction and assistance. In reality, they were saying that Joseph was tiring to deal with and that I was easy to ignore. Thus, they decided to take the easiest route. For me, the Jeep was the last straw. I was driving a 1,998 Honda Civic with 200,000 miles on it and a malfunctioning air conditioner. Working weekends and summers. I had saved up $3,000 to purchase a good used automobile that wouldn't break down while I was commuting to school. My father advised me to continue driving the Honda until it died entirely when I brought this up to my parents. Joseph drove a brand new Jeep Wrangler home from his graduation celebration 2 weeks later. Premium sound system. Raised suspension. Bright red. It's important for Joseph to have dependable transportation. My mother explained to me later when I asked how they could afford a $35,000 vehicle after telling me I should drive my dying Honda until it literally stopped running. She was practically crying as she talked about how proud she was that they could give him such a nice graduation gift. After college, I got a job at TechFlow Solutions, a small software company in Austin. I asked, "What about my transportation? Your Honda still runs." "Doesn't it?" That's when I realized I was never going to be their priority. Not when I was 12 and wanted to learn coding. Not when I was 16 and wanted advanced classes. Not when I graduated with honors. Never. In addition to the demanding job and the respectable $52,000 annual salary for an entry-level role. I was also quite excellent at what I did. In only 6 months, I was debugging code that had baffled engineers with 5 years more experience. And in 2 years, I was in charge of development projects. I was managing a team of 12 developers and earning $85,000 a year in just 4 years. I was reading every book I could find about startups and venture capital, attending local entrepreneur meetups on the weekends, attending networking events after work, and learning everything I could about the business side of technology. I also subscribed to TechCrunch, Wired, and Harvard Business Review. While Joseph had left college after 3 years and 6 different majors beginning with business administration, then switching to communications, trying marketing, dabbling in sports management, flirting with psychology, and finally settling on general studies. Before giving up completely, I was obsessed with learning not just how to build software, but how to build software businesses. His plans changed every few months, but the pattern remained the same. Big dreams, zero follow-through, and constant financial support from our parents. He had returned home and was working part-time at a friend's father's car dealership while talking about his big plans, which included starting a luxury car rental business, getting into cryptocurrency mining, and eventually becoming a social media influencer. After learning about day trading, he went on to real estate flipping. Then, luxury automobile rentals with a twist. This time, and he would also provide chauffeur services. With the eagerness of someone who had just learnt about fire, he presented each new plan to our parents. I watched this cycle repeat for years, sitting at Sunday dinners as Joseph explained his latest scheme, and my parents hung on every word. Joseph would make complex PowerPoint presentations, print out articles from Entrepreneur magazine, and talk for hours about market opportunities and projected profits. And every time, without fail, they would nod along like he was pitching the next Amazon. My mother opened a joint investment account with him when he mentioned day trading. My father actually looked into graphics cards to help him build a rig when he talked about cryptocurrency mining. And they began driving around with him to look at possible flip properties when he switched to real estate. But none of it ever worked out. In some way, Joseph's failures were always reframed as learning experiences, while my successes were treated as expected outcomes that needed no celebration or acknowledgement. The crypto rig mined exactly 0 coins before Joseph became bored and sold the components. The day trading account lost $8. 0 inches 6 months. The real estate venture never made it past the window shopping phase. During my 4 years at TechFlow, I had worked on projects for dozens of different industries. But construction companies were consistently the most frustrated with their software options. Construction project management is extremely complex. And by the time I was 28, I had saved $35. 000, and had recognized a gap in the market that I was uniquely positioned to fill. The software options available were either generic project management tools that didn't understand the specific needs of construction, or industry-specific tools that were so complicated that they required dedicated IT staff to operate. You're dealing with multiple subcontractors, constantly shifting timelines, material deliveries, weather delays, permit issues, inspection schedules, and budget constraints that change every day. During my research, I spoke with dozens of contractors and construction managers, and their feedback was very positive. I had been working on a concept for months, building prototypes on the weekends and evenings. The idea was specialized project management software for mid-sized construction companies, which are businesses that are too small for enterprise-level construction software, but too big for basic project management tools. One contractor, a man called Bill, who managed a home construction firm with around 40 people, put it perfectly. These enterprises were in dire need of something that could manage their particular processes without having a computer science degree to run. I developed a working prototype that met that need. It was user-friendly enough for a foreman to use on a job site, robust enough to manage intricate multi-phase projects, and tailored to the particular needs of the construction industry. We need something that can track our jobs, our subs, our materials, and our schedules, without making us feel like we need to hire a tech guy just to enter data. More crucially, I had validation. I had letters of intent totaling over $180. 0 police potential first-year income. And I had showed the prototype to 15 different construction businesses, 12 of which stated they would pay for the program if I could produce the complete version. The problem was that I needed money for more than just development costs. I needed money for office space, trademark and patent applications, legal fees to set up the business entity, proper market research, initial marketing, and enough runway to support myself while I got the business off the ground. I had done thorough financial projections and needed about $65. 0 inches total. I needed about $30. 0 more to launch properly. And I had just over half of that saved up. I could have searched for angel investors, but that would have required giving up equity in something I thought could be enormous. Or I could have gone to a bank. But it was almost impossible to get a business loan without collateral or a proven track record of success. Especially for a tech startup, asking my family for aid was the logical approach. At least in my perspective, I wasn't requesting charity. I had a thorough business plan, market research, financial predictions, and letters of intent from prospective clients. I had 3 weeks to prepare for the conversation, had the business plan professionally printed and bound, made a presentation with slides that showed market size, competitive analysis, revenu projection, and a clear timeline for profitability, and even had my uncle, who worked in finance. I'll check the numbers to make sure everything looked reasonable. I was giving them an opportunity to invest in what I honestly thought could be $1 million opportunity. On a Sunday night in March, I had planned supper at their place And Joseph was there as usual, playing Grand Theft Auto in the living room. As I assisted my mother in setting the table, I had brought flowers and a bottle of wine for my mother, hoping to start a discussion that would be constructive. After waiting for the right opportunity during dinner, I started my presentation by pulling out the printed business plan that I had spent countless hours perfecting, explaining the problem I was solving, demonstrating the prototype on my laptop, and showing them the letters of intent from potential customers. I had been working on this for the past year. The construction industry has a genuine need for specialized project management software, and the current solutions are either too general or too complicated. I have developed a prototype that fills this need, and I have tested the idea with prospective clients. My father hardly gave the papers I had put in front of him a glance. "Finn, you already have a good job," he said without looking up, cutting his steak with the mechanical precision of someone who wasn't really paying attention. "You're building a career, earning a respectable salary, and you have benefits. Why risk all of that for some pipe dream? Because this isn't a pipe dream. Dad, I've done the research. This fills a need in a developing industry." I opened my laptop and gave them the sample. The interface was clear and easy to use. "I have verified the concept construction businesses are desperate for better project management tools. And what is now available is either too difficult or too broad. Look at this," I said. Clicking through the features, a project manager can see the status of every job in their pipeline, identify bottlenecks before they become problems, and communicate with subcontractors directly through the platform. You could see job timelines, track subcontractor schedules, monitor material deliveries, and generate reports with just a few clicks. Joseph looked up from his phone long enough to look at my laptop screen, saying, "Looks complicated," before returning to his Instagram scrolling. My mother added the comment that still sticks in my memory. "This solves real problems that cost these companies thousands of dollars in delays and miscommunication." I asked, "I'm not asking you to fund some fantasy. I'm asking for $30. 0, to bridge the gap between what I've saved and what I need to launch properly. We think it's great that you're so ambitious, honey, but starting a business is really risky. Most of them fail. And you don't have any business experience. So I need the capital to do this right. It's an investment, not a present. And I'll pay you back with interest, or you may buy stock in the business." I showed them the financial predictions, which indicated profitability by year 2 and break even in 18 months, with conservative estimates indicating $500, 0 inches sales by year 3. I insisted that this wasn't gambling, but my father put down his fork and gave me the look I'd seen 1,000 times as a child, Finn. "We're not venture capitalists. We're accountants. We deal in certainties. Not May. Starting a tech company is basically gambling, and we don't gamble with our retirement fund." My father said dismissively that letters of intent aren't contracts, and that potential revenue isn't actual revenue. "I have a working prototype. I've been in the business for 6 years, and I have letters of intent from 12 different construction companies, which translates to $180. 0 inches, potential first-year revenue." His questions were all reasonable from a risk management standpoint. But what annoyed me was that they were all solvable issues rather than deal breakers. What happens if these companies decide they don't want your software after all? What happens if a competitor launches something similar? What happens if you can't scale the business? This isn't just some random idea I came up with last week. Dad, I've spent a year researching this opportunity. I've spoken to dozens of potential customers. I've studied the competition, and I've built and tested the product. Every business has risks, but this is a calculated risk, with real market validation. The dismissiveness in his voice was like a smack in the face. Joseph, who had been browsing through his phone the whole time, glanced up abruptly and said, "Maybe you should just stick with what you're good at." Finn, not everyone is cut out to be an entrepreneur. My father went on. Think about it logically. You're asking us to risk a significant amount of money on something that might work out. And even if it does work out, there's no guarantee you'll be successful. My younger brother, who had never accomplished anything in his life, was telling me to stay in my lane while my parents nodded along. The tech industry is cruel. Every business is a risk. I shot back, feeling my composure beginning to crumble. But this is a calculated risk with real market validation and proven demand. Finn, my mother said in that condescending tone I'd heard all my childhood, we just want what's best for you. And what's best for you is stability. Businesses fail all the time. Even those with good ideas and smart people behind them. I had spent a year of my life creating something real. Something that solved real problems for real customers. And my own mother was calling it a fantasy. This isn't a fantasy. Mom, you have a good job, good benefits, and a steady paycheck. Don't throw that away chasing some fantasy. There's a big difference. My father corrected me. You have potential customers. I have customers ready to buy the product. This is a legitimate business opportunity. The discussion went on for another 20 minutes. But my parents had already decided what they were going to do before I had even begun to speak. My father's last words were, "We can't support this venture." Finn. Since they weren't analyzing my business plan or taking the potential into consideration, but rather rejecting it because of their preconceived ideas about risk and success, it's just too dangerous. We can't afford to lose $30. 000 on something that may not work out, since we have our own financial future to think about. The thing about rejection is that sometimes it's exactly the motivation you need. I drove home that night feeling like I'd been punched in the stomach. Not just because they'd said no, but because of the way they'd said it. As if I were a child with grandiose delusions, rather than an adult with a legitimate business opportunity supported by market validation and research. After spending the next 3 months researching alternative funding options, I applied for a business line of credit using my house as collateral, looked into SBA loans, and went to work the following morning with a fire in my belly, something I had never felt before. If my family didn't believe in me, I would prove them wrong in another way. The business line of credit proved to be my best option. After 3 months of paperwork, financial statements, and meetings with loan officers, I was finally approved for $35. 000 at 5% interest, which, when combined with my savings, gave me enough to continue with the business. I even looked into crowdfunding. Though that was still a relatively new idea in 2019, I leased a small office space, set up accounting systems, hired my first employee, a front-end developer I'd worked with at TechFlow, who was passionate about joining a startup, and gave my boss 6 weeks' notice. Over the course of the following month and a half, I spent every evening and weekend getting ready for the changeover. There were nights when I lay awake wondering if my parents had been right. If I'd made a terrible mistake, leaving a stable job to chase an impossible dream. By September, I was working full-time on my company, Construct Flow, with the tagline, "Project Management Built for Construction." The first year was brutal, with 18-hour days, ramen noodles for dinner, and stress levels that likely took years off my life. But slowly, steadily, it began to pay off. In November, a Dallas residential builder who had been in my initial research group became my first customer. And in January, a Houston commercial contractor who had heard about us through word of mouth became my second. By the end of the first year, I had 8 paying clients and $140, 0 inches recurring revenue annually. Joseph, meanwhile, had a new dream. He saw something similar in Miami, and was certain that it would work in our area. So he decided to start a luxury car rental business that would serve affluent customers who wanted to rent Lamborghinis and Ferraris for special occasions. Weddings, anniversaries, prom nights, and corporate events. His business strategy was a PowerPoint presentation with images of pricey automobiles he got from manufacturer websites. And he had no expertise in the automotive sector, no knowledge of insurance needs, and no knowledge of liability risks. He had also done no market research. At a family barbecue in June, approximately 9 months after they had rejected my request, my cousin David was getting married, and my extended family had gathered at my parents' house for an engagement party. He had something that I did not. Though full and unwavering support from our parents, we've looked at the numbers and we think we can make it work, my father said, as I was making my way back through the kitchen, after going inside to use the lavatory. He said that although the initial investment is high, Joseph has done his research, and the potential returns are impressive. I stopped walking and pressed myself against the kitchen wall just out of sight. We're looking at taking out a loan against the business and our house, but with the projected revenue, we should be able to pay it back within 3 to 5 years. I heard my uncle ask, "How substantial are we talking about?" I stopped breathing. "Well, he'll need about $625. 000 total to get started properly. That's a lot of money." "Robert," my uncle said carefully. "It is." My father agreed. "However, this is Joseph, who has vision, drive, and connections in the luxury car market. And the rental market is really underserved in our area. The same parents who told me that $30,000 was too risky were about to risk more than $500,000 on my brother's total lack of a plan. I wanted to go into that room and ask my father precisely what connections Joseph had, exactly what research he had done, and exactly how renting a luxury automobile was less hazardous than using successful project management software with verified client demand. There is undoubtedly a market for high-end cars. My aunt asked, "What kind of cars are we talking about?" Joseph's voice entered the conversation. "Lamborghinis, Ferraris, McLarens, Porsches, high-end stuff that people want to drive but can't afford to own. The rental rates are incredible. We're talking $500 to $1, 5 cents per day. Depending on the vehicle," my uncle asked. "And the insurance is factored in." Joseph assured him that even with comprehensive coverage, the margins are still excellent. "We're so proud of him," my mother said. Joseph's really thought this through. And he's even identified specific vehicle models that offer the best return on investment. I had heard enough, but I seriously doubted that he had done any research into specialty insurance for exotic car rentals, which is notoriously expensive and complex. My parents, who had rejected my business concept because it was too dangerous, were going to stake their financial future on Joseph's dream of renting Lamborghinis to strangers. So I snuck out the back door and sat in my vehicle for 10 minutes, trying to digest what I had just learned. The BMW was only the first of several cars that Joseph purchased over the next few months, including a used Porsche 911 for $75. 000. A Lamborghini Huracan for $250. 000. And a Ferrari for $488. 300美元. 000. 2 weeks later, Joseph was driving a brand new BMW M5, which he claimed was part of his fleet research. Joseph said that he needed to understand the luxury car market before making decisions about his rental fleet. Joseph spent his time driving around town in various exotic cars, posting Instagram photos at upscale restaurants and nightclubs, and talking about his upcoming business launch, while never really taking any action to create a legitimate company. Each purchase was justified as fleet development or market research. But the luxury car rental business never really launched. His business was doing well, but he did spend tens of thousands of dollars on a website that never launched, marketing materials for a company that never opened, and business development trips to Miami and Las Vegas that were really nothing more than lavish vacations, where he posed with other people's fancy cars. Ironically, I was building exactly the kind of successful tech company my parents had told me was impossible. And by year 3, I was closing in on $1 million in revenue and had begun receiving acquisition offers from larger companies. By year 2, I had 37 customers and $580. 0 inches annual recurring revenue. And I had employed 4 people and moved into a larger office space. The strain of managing an expanding company while witnessing my family's financial collapse was getting to me. I'd gained 20 pounds from stress eating. I wasn't getting enough sleep. And I'd begun to avoid family get-togethers because I couldn't bear to listen to Joseph discuss his business while my parents nodded encouragingly. During a phone conversation with my mother in November of my 3rd year in business, Finn said, "Honey, I hope you're doing well with your little software company," which immediately made me nervous because my mother only used that artificially sweet tone when she wanted something. "It's going really well, Mom," Finn said, giving me the first indication that my parents were having serious financial difficulties. In fact, we're on course to make $1 million this year. Oh, that's fantastic. My love, listen, I was wondering if you could do anything for your father and me. I almost laughed when I said, "We were hoping you might be able to lend us some money to get through the next few months because we're having some cash flow issues with the business." They had the audacity to ask me for money after everything they'd done to me, including turning down my plea for assistance and squandering over $500,000 on Joseph's irrational beliefs. "How much are we talking about?" "Mom, well, we'd need about $50. 000 to cover some immediate expenses, just until we're back on our feet." There was a lengthy pause. "Joseph is currently facing some difficulties. Finn, the car rental business didn't go as planned. So he's searching for new opportunities." "What difficulties?" Another pause. "He's had some legal issues. Some of the cars were repossessed. And there are some disagreements with creditors. Everything with Joseph was tricky. Of course. And I was ready to wager that he had been using credit cards and personal loans to pay for expensive automobiles. Likely lying to creditors about his income and business prospects. I'm sorry you're having financial difficulties. Mom, but I can't just write you a check for $50. Ling ling ling. That's a big sum of money. And considering what happened when I asked for help 3 years ago, I think you can understand why I'm not jumping at the chance to get involved in the family finances. Finn, this is completely different," she said, her voice taking on the acerbic tone I remembered from arguments as a child. "It's not fair. Finn, we did what we believed to be best at the time." "No. Mom, we're not asking you to invest in some risky business venture. We're asking our son for help during a tough time." "You mean the same son whose risky business venture you refused to support, the one that's now making 7 figures in revenue?" The conversation ended with my mother crying and me feeling like the bad guy for not opening my checkbook right away. But I had learned something valuable over the previous 3 years. You did what was convenient at the time, supporting Joseph's dreams while dismissing mine. And now you want me to save you from the consequences. My parents were facing foreclosure on their home, and the accounting business was losing customers as news spread about their financial difficulties. Over the course of the next 6 months, the calls increased in frequency and desperation. Financial boundaries are just as vital as emotional ones. My uncle informed me that the situation was even worse than I had anticipated, as Joseph had not only purchased the luxury cars with loans against my parents' assets, but he had also taken out credit cards in the business name, borrowed against the cars themselves, and even persuaded my parents to co-sign on additional loans for business development. Joseph had completely vanished. apparently living in Colorado with a girlfriend, while evading the legal repercussions of his failed business endeavors. Joseph had left the state, leaving my parents to deal with irate creditors and possible legal action. The cars had been repossessed, leaving them with massive loans and no assets to show for it. The total debt was close to $800. Secured against everything my parents owned, and the last call came on a Tuesday evening in May, while I was at home going over quarterly reports. Dad, I'm sorry to hear that. But wait. Just let me finish. I know we haven't always been the most supportive of your business. And I know you're probably upset about the Joseph situation. But we're disparity. Finn, I need to be completely honest with you. We're going to lose everything. The house. The business. Our retirement savings. All of it. We need your assistance, since we lost all we wagered on your brother. I waited for him to go on. According to a financial advisor we've been speaking with, the only way we can save the home is if we can get $180. 000 to settle the debt and restructure the loans. You want me to give you $180. 000. Since your company is doing so well. Even though we know that's a lot of money, we wanted to speak to you about that. Not give. He responded hastily. Loan. We'd pay you back as soon as we get back on our feet. Dad, how exactly do you plan to pay me back? You just told me you're losing the business and facing foreclosure. I had to put the phone down for a moment because our advisor said that if you were willing to sell your house and move back home for a while, we could use that money to save everything. They wanted me to sell my house. The house that I had worked so hard to buy. Dad, let me make sure I understand this correctly. You want me to sell my house, uproot my life, and move back home, so you can avoid the consequences of spending $625. 000 on Joseph's failed business, Finney. Please don't make this about Joseph. This is about family. The house I'd used as collateral to start the business, they'd refused to support and move back in with them so they could fix the mess they'd made betting on Joseph's fantasies. As he said, we made mistakes. But we can't change the past. We can only ask for help now. No. Dad, this is exactly about Joseph. This whole situation is because you chose to bet our family's financial future on his delusions while telling me that my actual business plan was too risky. You're right. Dad, you can't change the past. And in the past, you told me that I couldn't support a legitimate business opportunity that I had with real market validation when I needed help. But you mortgaged everything you owned to finance Joseph's fantasies when he wanted to play with expensive cars. Finn, I'm not done. I interrupted him. There was silence on the other end of the queue. No. Dad, I'm not giving you $180. Ling. I built this business with my own money, took my own risks, and worked 18 hours a day for years, while you all wrote me off as a failure waiting to happen. Now that it's successful, now that I've proven you wrong, you want me to liquidate everything I've worked for to bail you out. You made your decision 3 years ago, and now you have to live with the consequences. Finn, we are your parents. We raised you and loved you. You loved Joseph. I interrupted. You raised Joseph and invested in him. I raised myself. I built this business myself, and I'm keeping it myself. I'm not selling my house or moving back home. 3 weeks later, they arrived at my house, and I was working in my home office when I heard the doorbell ring. I hung up the phone and sat in my living room for a while. Gazing out at the garden, I had landscaped myself in the house. I had purchased with money I had earned. Reflecting on the journey that had brought me to this point, I opened the door to find my parents standing on my front porch, looking older and more defeated than I've ever seen them. My father had lost weight, and there were dark circles under his eyes. I looked out the window and saw my parents' car in the driveway, the same Honda Civic my mother had been driving for 8 years after they sold her newer car to help fund Joseph's endeavors. We drove 3 hours to see you. So please give us a few minutes. My mother looked like she had been crying for days. Hello? Finn, my mother said softly. Mom. Dad. I went outside and shut the door behind me. What are you doing here? We were hoping we could talk. My father said face to face. It's important. I think we've said everything that needs to be said. It was a warm afternoon, and I could hear children playing in the neighbor's backyard, normal sounds of a normal life, which felt surreal given the conversation I was about to have, until my father finally broke the silence. The foreclosure is final. I defied my better judgment and pointed to the chairs on my front porch. Where we sat down, my parents looked at each other, and my mother said, Joseph is in rehab. We have 30 days to leave the house. I'm sorry to hear that. The business is gone. 2. We had to sell it for almost nothing just to pay off some of the debt. Your mother and I are looking at bankruptcy. He struggled with substance abuse, the strain of the company's failure, and a few legal problems. And it's been very challenging. And there it was. They lost both their company and their house, while the golden kid, on whom they would place all their bets, was in treatment for drug addiction. We acknowledged that we made mistakes. My dad went on. We know that when you begged for help, we ought to have given it to your company. We know that we trusted Joseph too much and you too little. My mother responded, Okay. We're not asking you to fix everything. All we want is enough assistance to get us back on our feet. Help with a tiny flat deposit. Perhaps. Until we decide what to do next. I looked at these two individuals who had reared me, provided for my food, clothing, and housing for 18 years, as well as who had consistently eroded my self-esteem, disregarded my accomplishments, and staked their future on my brother's failings. I need you to understand something. Mom and Dad, you didn't just say no when I approached you 3 years ago with a business proposal and begged for assistance. I felt foolish for even asking. Thanks to you, you told me that I was being unrealistic and that I should stop pursuing my goals and be thankful for my stable employment. Both of them cast their eyes to their hands. Then, less than a year later, you borrowed $625, 000, to finance Joseph's ambition of renting a fancy automobile. Joseph just said that he felt good about pricey automobiles without providing a business strategy, market analysis, or industry expertise. My father added softly, We are aware that our decision was incorrect, aren't we? I got out of my chair. Because you still haven't shown regret for turning down my business when it had promise. Even as you sit here pleading for my assistance, you regret placing your wager on Joseph. However, Finn, you don't regret not placing a wager on me. That is untrue. My mom got things started. Mom, it's true. You're not here because you realize how unjustly you treated me. Rather, you're here because you need money. Would you be here expressing regret for not helping me if Joseph's company had been successful and you weren't in danger of going into foreclosure? Neither of them responded. To be honest, you've always thought of me as the backup plan. Whoever is in charge will always be there to tidy up the mess. I'm done being the fallback option. Then, I looked back to them as I made my way to the front entrance. I've spent 3 years working 16-hour days to create what you said was unachievable. I've shown that my audacious concept turned out to be a profitable venture. It is not because of your lack of support that I have succeeded, but rather in spite of it. Please. Finn, my mother pleaded, her eyes welling with sorrow. No matter how long it takes, we'll reimburse you. How much money? You just informed me that you had lost both the company and the home. You have no assets and no income. What precisely will you use to reimburse me? With desperation. My father responded, We'll figure something out. We'll find employment. We'll go to work. Whatever it takes, we'll do it. You're 62. Dad, you're 59. Mom, you've only ever worked for your own accounting company. What employment will you do that will enable you to sustain yourself and repay tens of thousands of dollars? The truth hovered between us like a burden. No, is the response. I spoke aggressively. You won't get any money from me. You won't locate a flat with my aid. No loans are being co-signed by me. I will not allow you to live with me. When you determined that Joseph's dreams were more valuable than my tested business strategy, you made your decision. You must now live with that decision. How could you be so callous? My mom broke down in tears. We are your parents. I am also your son. For all his life, you disregarded, neglected, and ignored your kid. Even as you sit here pleading for assistance, you are still unable to recognize the achievement of your kid. My front door was open. You ought to go immediately. In my opinion, slowly. My father got to his feet. He drooped his shoulders in surrender. I won't. Finn, if you decide not to, I'll confess that there was a moment when I almost yelled as I watched them make their way to their vehicle. I almost gave them something to calm the anguish in their faces and urged them to wait. Then, I recalled how it felt to sit in their dining room 3 years before, outlining my business strategy, sharing my vision, and requesting their assistance. My father warned me it was too dangerous, while my brother smiled and advised me to focus on my strengths. In the months that followed, I recalled working 18-hour days, eating ramen noodles, and worrying about every dollar while they provided Joseph with a luxury vehicle dream that was 20 times more expensive than I had requested. I recalled all the instances in my early years when Joseph's mediocrity was praised and my accomplishments were minimized. I closed the door after Joseph had all he requested, and I was always instructed to be thankful for what I have. 6 months have passed since then. Since YouTube just released this new hype function, I haven't heard from them. Press the hype button if this article has captured your attention. This video deserves to go viral. And it keeps even more bizarre stories coming your way. It informs YouTube. Story 2. Before my birthday. My sister forbade me from attending her childless wedding. However, she insisted that I let her children attend my childless wedding. My cousin then informed me that she intended to steal the show during my wedding by announcing her pregnancy. Hi there. I'm 26 years old and getting married in a year. My sister and my dad have been criticizing me ever since I sent out the save the dates last week. I really need to inform you guys about what occurred in the past before I get to the major issue. My connection with my 3 one-year-old sister Kayla is now a little rocky. She can be really harsh and entitled, which is something I still struggle with. As a result, I've always desired a tight relationship with my sister. But she never understood. For the most part, she avoided me and treated me like an unwelcome insect. Young and naive. I believed I could win my sister's affection. I wanted to get along well with her since she was like my hero. My sister was constantly doing something to get attention when she was little. That's how she was. And I embraced her for who she was. I may have been a bit naive to believe that we might be close. When she informed me that I was not invited to her wedding, I believe I finally woke up. I was not permitted to attend Kayla's wedding since she informed me that it would not be attended by children. But here's the deal. My 18th birthday was just a week away from her wedding. It was absurd. So I sobbed and pleaded with my sister to make an exception. As a youngster, she was tagging me. Her location wasn't kid-friendly or anything. She refused to provide alcohol at all. She didn't have any good cause to keep me out. She probably didn't want me to attend the wedding. Anyway, even though I begged her not to, she excluded me, and I was unable to alter her decision. My parents hadn't stepped in. I began separating from my sister after that day. Kayla didn't care or didn't notice. My inclination is towards the latter. She and I have a very strange connection, and I don't even know her husband well. We don't communicate one-on-one in any way. We just get together at family events. Although I like her 2 children, I must admit that I don't have a close relationship with them either. Kayla never tries to ask me to her place or spend time with me alone. When her children were born, I made an effort to grow closer, but she either disregarded or rejected me. I eventually quit trying and focused on the family members who really want my presence in their life. This background information will help you better grasp my predicament. I chose to go on a date with my fiancé after we were engaged. Early on, we made the decision that we did not want children at our wedding. In order for family and friends to be ready, we created the dates, and mailed them to them. We also said that there were to be no children at all during the wedding. Kayla was invited as well. Until something occurred that compelled me to write this piece. I was content to move on and focus on making preparations. A few days ago, my sister phoned and blasted me, saying that I must be lying to her. I obviously asked her to explain what was wrong, since at first I didn't comprehend the commotion. After a while, I realized from her outbursts that Mom was upset that I was getting married without children. Guys, can you image that? The lady who married without children was upset that I was doing the same. When she stated that, I just couldn't believe what I heard. I kept asking her whether I was misinterpreting her or if she was being serious. However, my sister furiously verified that my presumption was correct. She detested the fact that I was keeping children out of the wedding. I informed her that I had the last say over how to handle it since it was my wedding. Additionally, I made it very obvious to her that I did not want children at the wedding. I was planning to keep my innocent nieces and nephews out of the wedding, which infuriated my sister, who labeled me an entitled and immature bridezilla. The majority of the children are under 5, so they won't really miss the wedding anyway. I assured her gently. In addition, I didn't want children to go about and inadvertently get into anything. Not to add that there will be a lot of drinking and an open bar. Every member of the family with children has babies and toddlers. And as we all know, young children cannot be disciplined or reprimanded to behave in a certain way. Children will behave like children. And I was only addressing the issue at its earliest stage, rather than attempting to handle any potential disaster. My sister blasted me for calling her kid challenging and uncontrollable. So it seems it was the incorrect thing to say. I never said anything like that. I assured them. In response, Kayla said that because they won't create any trouble like the other children, they need to be welcomed to the wedding. I informed her that I wouldn't be making such an exception as everyone would want to bring their kids and accuse me of being biased. Admittedly, I have some very close friends and relatives who would be saddened and outraged if I let foolish Kayla bring her children while they were unable to. I told my sister everything, but she refused to listen. The lady shouted and screamed at me incessantly. After a while, I became very angry with her and told her that she had no right to be angry with me since she had a wedding without children. She hadn't even let me, her own sister, to attend her wedding. I reminded her she had omitted her own sister, who was 1 week away from becoming 18, while I was eliminating actual children. That did not sit well with my sister. She began to rant at me once again, accusing me of being immature, petty, and vengeful by harboring baseless resentments. I was deliberately doing this to get even with her for what she did years ago, she said, calling me a mad lady. She hung up on me just as I was going to explain that this wasn't even about her. Dead quiet on my end since I didn't bother to get in touch again. But my sister is calling me derogatory names and blowing up my phone. Additionally, she has enlisted my parents and persuaded them to blow up my phone. According to my parents, I shouldn't be callous enough to keep my own nephews out of the wedding, and this childless wedding is definitely not a smart idea. They also keep repeating that it's only a simple request from my sister and that I shouldn't destroy our connection over it. I fail to see how this is a request. I am much alone, a minor one. My folks are also making me quite angry right now. My fiancé informed me that he also doesn't want to make any exceptions when we spoke. If anything, he is furious with my parents and sister for attempting to influence my decision. He is upset that I am being shamed for the same thing since they are aware of what my sister did at her wedding. His side of the family is totally okay with his not having children at the wedding. My fiancé is totally on board. And he doesn't even want my obnoxious sister to attend the wedding. However, my sister and dad are arguing otherwise. They're also attempting to blackmail me, which isn't amusing at all. Even though we are not close, I still adore my nephews. And it makes me feel a little bad. I'm worried that I'll lose my mind due to the wedding planning and my demanding work schedule. Could you kindly advise me on my next course of action? I'm at my breaking point with their nonsense. If it weren't for my fiancé's family, I would have already considered elopement. I don't want them to miss their son's special day since they didn't do anything wrong. However, my family's foolishness is forcing me to reevaluate every choice I've ever made. Edit. I am unable to respond to every remark since I am receiving too many. In this update, I will thus fix a few issues. This is just for the queries that keep coming up. And I will add more details in a lengthier update. I was aware that some people would criticize me for getting married without children. I don't think my request is in any way flawed. I would have included my adolescent cousins or something if I had any. However, the youngest member of the family is no older than 6 or 7. Additionally, please refrain from acting as if kids may cause chaos. Additionally, children find weddings to be lengthy and dull. That would not be fun for any of them. It would be impolite and hurt their feelings to send them home after the wedding. I don't want to include them in any aspect of the wedding because of this. You folks were also curious about my sister's response to my criticism of her hypocrisy. She did, however, have some flawed reasoning to back up her position. She said that it made sense for her to have a childless wedding since nobody truly had children at the time. However, I should be inviting my cousins to the party given that the majority of them have children. I now understand that I would have been the sole minor attending Kayla's wedding. At that time, none of our relatives had children, and none of her acquaintances had gotten married so young. She didn't make an exception for me, even though I was the youngest in the family. I'm beginning to wonder why my parents gave her the freedom to do as she pleased and now object to my choice. My parents just informed me that it was Kayla's big day and that they had no say in the matter. Despite my pleading with them to persuade her to invite me, there have also been inquiries concerning the opinions of my other relatives and acquaintances about my wedding without children. Well, they didn't say a word. They all said yes when they RSVP'd. Everybody who lives close by would either hire babysitters or their family to watch their children. They have plenty of time to make plans, since I am basically giving them a year's notice. Some of them, I believe, are secretly relieved to be able to spend some time away from the children without feeling bad about it. Instead of being a parent all day, I'm giving them an opportunity to relax and have a little fun. One update: I can't believe how many people have commented on my article. I got a lot of varied feedback, but the majority of the negative feedback came from folks who detest weddings without children. Why some of you believe your kid belongs everywhere is beyond me. Do you insist on bringing your children with you when you go to adult-only establishments? This reasoning simply doesn't make sense to me. Couples choose childless marriages in the first place because of entitled individuals like you. Kids make mistakes. For a period, since they are youngsters, it would be inappropriate to be angry with them. Therefore, just refusing to allow them in is the simple option. Additionally, that child will likely be quite bored throughout the ceremony and will hardly remember the wedding. What do bored children do at wedding ceremonies? Quit behaving as if kids should be everywhere. My sister is no better than any of you. Oh, and some of you actually attempted to do me a favor by telling me that I shouldn't be upset that my sister didn't invite me to her wedding using the same reasoning. I was almost 18, so I was well versed in wedding protocol. I started attending weddings when I was 14 years old. I was old enough to have complete control over myself. Therefore, I never once misbehaved or created trouble. I would have let them to return if the family had any adolescents. All of the children I left out are less than 6 or 7. Since I won't be talking about these hurtful remarks again, I just wanted to share my viewpoint. Everyone else who got in touch and offered wise counsel has been really beneficial. Regarding my sister's tendency to create controversy in order to get attention, you folks brought up some insightful points. You may not be all that wrong. My sister despises her role as a sibling. She dislikes sharing attention and has never desired a sibling when she wasn't in favor of having another child. I believe my parents felt guilty. They attempt to support her and advise me to make concessions because of this. That's what I believe. Anyhow, I believe my sister purposefully chose a day around my 18th birthday because she wanted everyone to speak on her and not me. And she has thrown some serious tantrums on my special occasions in the past. In my family, celebrating an 18th birthday is a huge deal. And everyone goes all out on that day. Everyone was exhausted after the wedding. And my parents didn't have much money. So I didn't get to have one. I didn't really care since I was feeling a bit upset and let down at the moment. Up until her wedding, my sister had all the attention she needed. On my 20th birthday, she announced her first pregnancy. And soon after I started my first real job, she announced her second. Thus, it is evident that there is a pattern in it. I honestly didn't think about it. But some of your remarks really got me to reflect. Perhaps my sister is attempting to cause difficulty in order to get at least part of my attention. Right now, I'm a little tired of her, but I'm at a loss for what to do. I might think about removing her invitation. Several of you said, unfortunately, it isn't an option. My parents will not accept this since they value family. Funny enough, my 7-year-old fiancé Nate has been arguing that my sister shouldn't attend since she has a major issue with our wedding. But I'm aware that's not possible. My parents are now advocating for a family gathering to resolve this matter so that we can just go on with our lives. Even though I'm not sure whether it will help, I may still go. In order to talk about everything with family and under one roof, they want my sister and I to be there with them. They are quite certain that if we do this, we will reach a decent compromise. I really doubt that, and I'm not sure what sort of concession they're looking for from me. I suppose I'll know when I know. I'm getting ready to stand my ground and not give in to pressure. I'm not too worried since I'm not a doormat. I'll provide an update to let you folks know how that conversation went. The second update. After returning from the family meeting, I'm still unsure about what to do. My parents had been optimistic that we would come to an agreement, but that didn't happen. My sister and I weren't going to make any concessions, as I had anticipated. Because I had the audacity to invite her priceless children to the wedding, she just continued ranting and berating me. She just would not listen to my repeated attempts to clarify my position, while my sister was screaming like a banshee. I was behaving like a decent human being, which made my parents feel a bit sorry for me. My sister doesn't really listen to them. However, no amount of yelling or guilt-tripping would change my mind. I informed Kayla firmly. Then, since I was determined to be a spoilsport, she advised me to locate and pay for babysitters. I strongly rejected that as I don't believe I'm accountable for it. Again, apart from Kayla, no one else was requesting assistance or payment. My sister has no trouble paying for nursery. I am aware that she sometimes hired them for her date nights. But she refused to pay for one because she didn't want to have her children at my wedding. She asked me to pay for her babysitters. So I informed her that I wouldn't. Nate would never approve of this. And our funds were already limited. Then Kayla said that the least I could do was cover the cost of the babysitter, since she would have to rush to locate one on such short notice. I chuckled and told her she had a whole year to organize things. Kayla refused to accept my parents' offer to cover the cost of her babysitters. She was being petty. Yes, She wanted me to pay for my failure to regard her sentiments while planning my wedding. In addition, my parents attempted to propose that Kayla's husband take care of the children at home while she went to the wedding. That proposal did not sit well with my sister. I was completely done with the chat after what seemed like an eternity. My sister's outbursts had left me psychologically spent, and I was already fatigued. I informed her that I would not be altering my wedding for her, and she was free to skip it if she was really upset about it. After that, my sister yelled at me, and my parents stood by her side. They advised me to have my sister attend the wedding and to refrain from saying such things. Again, the talk was going nowhere, so I departed a bit later. I was aware that the meeting was pointless and beneficial to me. I just told Nate what happened when I got home. He had become even more enraged. I haven't checked my phone yet, but my sister and parents are still bombarding it with pointless messages. I'm now really thinking about eloping and not even inviting my side of the family. I shall advise the wider family to speak with my parents if they inquire as to why no one was invited. Right now, elopement is definitely the wisest course of action, since I am truly at my wit's end. The third update. You have no clue how much your kind remarks have aided me. So let me say that before I make this update, I felt like my wedding was already wrecked and was simply tired of everything. Even if I haven't planned the wedding well, issues are already starting to arise. I lost all motivation and was no longer able to experience the thrill. My sister's stupidity was taking precedence over all of these wedding procedures. I was on the verge of telling Nate to notify his folks that we were going to elope. However, your remarks have really made me realize things. You are correct when you say that, because my friends and my extended family haven't done anything wrong. I shouldn't penalize them. Additionally, you brought up the fact that my sister was already making the whole situation about herself and most likely succeeded in drawing the majority of the focus to herself. It was as if my mind suddenly became clear. In reality, my sister was already wrecking my wedding, and I was allowing her to continue. I ought to have put an end to this bullshit much earlier. I have no idea why. After our relationship had deteriorated, I was so adamant on seeing her. Kayla has shown her inability to change. Giving her undue significance and wasting my words is all I'm doing. All of these thoughts crossed my mind. I then made the decision to sit down with my folks for a brief conversation. Nate accompanied me as well for support. I wanted to speak with my parents in privacy. So, we didn't have my sister present during the meeting. My parents have been severely criticized by you all for their part in this catastrophe. Even if I am angry with them, they are still my parents, and much superior than my awful sister in the end. I thus wanted to speak with them briefly, in an attempt to explain my position. During our lengthy conversation, I really let my emotions out on them. It was by no means a cool-headed conversation. Both my dad and I were in tears. It was quite sentimental. I didn't hold back this time. I told my parents about all the occasions Kayla had wrecked my special days and tried to divert their focus from me. I reminded them that Kayla had no right to demand me to invite her children to the wedding, since they had already declined to persuade her to do so. I vented to them completely, even telling them that they were all making me want to quit and go away. I believe that my desire to run away because I was too tired of organizing my own wedding had a significant impact on my parents. Nate also spoke out and said that he was in favor of elopement, since the turmoil was already deterring him from wanting a lavish wedding. My father began frantically telling me not to do this. As my mother sobbed, they expressed sincere regret and somewhat acknowledged their own responsibility for my sister's years of purposeful harassment of me. Since Kayla has often chastised them for giving her a brother and forcing her to confide in me about everything, I was correct to assume that they tended to side with her. My sister's level of greed and envy is beyond ridiculous. Now, I'm just so over her. My parents and I had a lengthy conversation, and Nate shared his opinions as well, which was quite beneficial. He gave my parents an independent viewpoint that let them see how unjust they were treating me. In order to avoid missing my wedding, they pleaded with us not to elope. It's interesting to note that they also expressed a desire to fully enjoy my wedding, since they had used the majority of my previous milestones to either celebrate Kayla's accomplishments or soothe her down. As I said before, Kayla never failed to spoil my important occasions. My parents also seem to have had enough of her actions. Thank God. They have pledged to improve and have finally understood me. My sister is no longer important to me. Soon, I'll write a no-contact letter and remove her off my wedding invitation list. My parents now support the choice that Nate and I have already made. Even though Kayla is my sister, I won't act like a doormat just to please her. When I say that I'm done, I mean it. Version 4. Hello, everyone. I had to return to provide a last update. Since you all anticipated some drama, several of you have been DMing me to ask what happened. Yes. When I told my sister what I had decided, there had been some turmoil. But now I'm in a more relaxed state. She suffered more this time than I did. Even though I sort of anticipated her to cause drama, I returned to provide an update since you may be curious about how my sister ended up suffering. Warning: my sister is now experiencing marital issues. As agreed upon, I prepared and texted my sister to inform her that she had been formally uninvited and that I would no longer be corresponding with her going forward. I had reminded her of her unpleasant behavior and told her about all she had done to me. I informed her that I was tired of being a total doormat and that I no longer wanted her drama. My sister blew out again after I wrote her the email. The fact that she took offense when I uninvited her and made contact with her genuinely caught me off guard. Since she never wanted me in the first place, I assumed she would have been content. But since I wasn't responding to her messages, she felt insulted and complained to my parents. My parents backed me rather than hers. So she was in for a nasty surprise. She then proceeded to inform the other members of the family that I was a cruel and envious bridezilla and that I was excluding her for no reason. Initially, I received texts from individuals asking me to help them and to be lenient with her. However, Giselle, a 3-4-year-old cousin of mine, suddenly revealed something shocking in the group chat. Giselle claims that my sister was upset with me for not asking her to my wedding because she had something planned to divert attention from me. According to Giselle, Kayla had intended to either show up pregnant or make her pregnancy known during the wedding in an effort to persuade her husband to have a third child. My sister seems to be far more dysfunctional than I first believed. After I got engaged, she foolishly told Giselle about her intentions. Kayla had even told her, rather boldly, that she would take center stage at my own wedding and embarrass me as usual. I won't get into the specifics of her other remarks, but it just demonstrates how somewhat fixated Kayla is on our rivalry. Although I don't compete with her, she has always seen me as a competitor. She was furious to hear that I was cutting off all communication with her, which meant she may never have another opportunity to outshine me. After Giselle revealed the information, you can only imagine how disastrous things became for her. In summary, my parents have been furious with her, and everyone believes she is insane. Unexpectedly, Kayla attempted to defend her behavior rather than make any denials. Since her husband didn't appreciate Kayla's behavior, I believe it ultimately made matters worse. My parents tell me that Dad did not find it funny that Kayla was trying to overshadow my wedding by having a third kid. His family is already dissatisfied with her, since it seems that she has also shown some competitive behavior with his sister and cousin. He informed her that either she received assistance or they got a divorce, since this was the final straw for him. Kayla sobbed in front of our parents and accused me of destroying her marriage because she was envious. Yes, it seems that I am partly to blame for this. Yes. I hung up as soon as I recognized her voice. But she had attempted to contact me and rant at me from a different number. Fortunately, her husband became quite irate, and she ceased her pranks after a few days. Her spouse is now sleeping in a different room while they attend couples counseling. I'm very certain that the man is staying because of the children. His bond with his family members was also damaged by Kayla's pranks, which has caused him to be angry for some time. I'm hoping Kayla will finally work on herself and take things seriously this time. As for me, it seems that I will ultimately have a quiet, drama-free wedding. I really appreciate all of your advice, which did assist me in establishing some firm limits. However, because it's doubtful that things would worsen again, this will be the last update. You are aware that I will return with a new post if they do.